Additionally, factors like stigma, limited access to mental health services, and the pressures to be a provider at all costs can contribute to the struggles that men go through as far as their mental health is concerned. So today on the Asaase Breakfast Show, we're going to have one of the most important conversations of our time. One that often hides behind smiles, jokes, and strength. The silence of our men. And I call it mental health across generations. Silent struggles, louder voices. From the young man who can't explain why they feel constantly overwhelmed to the older father who never been allowed to cry, mental health lives in our homes. They're here in our workplaces and our traditions. But we don't talk about it enough. Not out loud, at least. Well, this morning, we're going to break that silence. And we're doing it across generations. So, we have in the studio my colleague, Fritz Delano Amagashi, who still hasn't explained why he's had to shave his beard. But that's a conversation for another day. But we have in studio clinical psychotherapist at El-Pizo Counseling Services. In fact, husband and wife team, Elvis Baah-Gyebi and Ruth Baah-Gyebi, and they're joining us in the studio. Ruth, of course, will share her professional perspectives as well as the perspective of a woman, whether she's able to spot and what women can do to spot what men go through when they're silent, when they're going through a bend and they're very quiet. How do you help them? We'll be joined also by Nana Asaase, who is a poet and passionate about mental health. A lot of creative people go through very, very quiet traumas and troubles. We'll also talk to Dr. Richard Day Asamoah, who is a member of the communications team at the Mental Health Authority. And in the studio, we're also joined by the man who is known as Ebibidruhini, Nana Kissi Opam I. He's a traditional healer, and we'll be trying to understand, because once upon a time, before the first pharmaceutical plant was built, we were still patching people up who had mental health problems in our world. Welcome to the Asaase Breakfast Show to all of you.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you.
I'd like to start off, first of all, with you, Ruth. I think chivalry is not dead. But it's really, what is mental health? And why is men's mental health so important?
What is mental health? So you have physical health, you have emotional health, you have well-being. Mental health, it affects the mind. It's one may call it a disorder of some sort, but it affects the mind, where people will be living with things like schizophrenia, paranoia, living with depression, stress, anxiety. We may, like in this country, we say, like we look at people that are on the street that don't have clothes on or walking around, and we call them mad people, excuse me to say. But they're not mad people. These are people that are suffering, that have not had the opportunity to be seen by a doctor to get the right medication. And a lot of times, you know, in our society is a stigma. We don't talk about it. We kind of shun them. We think that they're demon possessed, or somebody is a spiritual thing, or somebody has done juju on them. But mental illness is just as important as any other illness. Like, it's easy for us to go to see a doctor and say that I have an ulcer, or I'm living with diabetes, or whatever illness. But mental illness oftentimes can be invisible. We think that mental illness is only for people that are walking on the streets naked. But any one of us here could be suffering from some type of a mental
illness.
Yes.
Okay, great. Now, with that established, I'd like to go to Nana Kissi Opam I. He's a traditional healer, in Ghana. We'll be speaking in Twi, and I will be taking some notes. And then for those of you who may not grasp the Twi language immediately, I will try and paraphrase much of what Nana says. Nana, Machi, as you say. That's the same pay what only a bit of my bonkom way. Now,
maybe yes, meant to me for me who
there be not do who shall brofun mukasi so ananka tree ampa na se yakase obi adwene mu ntene na and I say me pese ba kase obi a waboda because it's adwene na se wo mpomu ntene wo umpomu adwene so kampom no
nana ni wo mo say ni pedua no wo yare ahodo bebre bro be hasara ne be 300 na ye bro sakura enti ni ped etire no wo ne obrinta ni functions a adwuma ni peti no eti se camera ti se video camera etire na twamfudi na sai recordo event bi etino machine by itself enti etini twamfuni eniwa no twamfuni wotinu mu na afi asai recording enti se bibia etumi bi afidie bi etumi ye saade no enfonso betumi aba ho enti onipa ti no ade kase a efase eboa medipadua no ye bibia enti sene amenso mate no na se minimo no ansa na nipadua no kra formation no ebeba no etire no ne bakane sase eno na ehu hia kase nti niema nipadua no hu ne sese oye papa ene bone mu nchichemu ni nyina no adwere no ne ma saade no tumi baso nti se how ba hu pa na ye kan se o na adwere mu how
obi a wo sa nipa yare wo di ebibidru aye we dwuma no enkofo ya na omo adwene mu ntine wo mo yare a ye de bibel ama wo bo mo
bi pa cho bebre pa
okay
me ye ho dwuma pa
na ya ye de obi ba ekwan ben so na wo fa edi hu se nipa yi yare a hanana yare a kanadwin
se obi nya adwene mu yare a ne bu se ompe agrodie na agro atwam agro ompe nipa mu so de ne ho be hye edom ibu akra na kasa tumi hye dem no watum a umpie na osusu se oye wiase nyina etamfo ana se wiase nyina tan no nti bu se ode no otwe ne ho fi edipa ho bi kra onidi betumi aba be se ndabe nenu miensa ne nan na onidi ono so a ompese obaji bibia fi obi anchen se wo se su krama na onum sa ne binu mu de etie nti se nipa no ba du me nchen a sa nyamedi hu bi na me bobodin se e wa jenso ba chia no kra ompene on fa ne sa mauna wa chia no nti me hu no sa ne ma hu se adwuma no bi na aba no
now Nana Kissi Opam I maybe church the all kind mo so Nana Kissi has explained that there are many illnesses, more than 300 illnesses that the human body can encounter in one's life. The brain or the mind is a machine. It records events, it's able to interpret situations. It is the seat of one's consciousness. And from what he knows, that the brain is one of the very first organs that are formed in a fetus. And in his line of work, indeed, many times people are brought to him who have mental illness. And as a traditional healer, he uses herbs and other means to help them and find healing. He mentions a number of things that are typically the symptoms that he observes in people who are brought to him. The people who are shunning away from engaging with other people, They withdraw. They don't speak very much. They can go days without eating. And sometimes they would treat any attempt to engage with them with hostility. While he was speaking, Ruth and Elvis were both nodding. And I believe because you understand their Kan language. Now, as, for the lack of a better expression, Western-trained healers of sort, you identified with a number of the things that he said. Is the diagnosis different in any way? The symptoms that he mentioned, are they things that if you observed, you would conclude that this is somebody who is going through a mental health challenge? Elvis.
Thank you for having us once again. We would like to seize this opportunity to say good morning to all your faithful listeners on this radio show. Indeed, when one is living with any form of mental illness, it's imperative that we do some assessment and do diagnosis. Because if you don't go to the root of it and you start the treatment plan, the question is, what is it that you are treating if you don't know the diagnosis and the root causes? So, example, if someone is living with PTSD, that is the post-traumatic stress disorder, whereby they going through anxiety and have repeated and intrusive thoughts. Example, somebody going through maybe witnessing an accident or have been to the war zone. All the time we say that our combat men, when they go to war and they come, sometimes they can't sleep at night because it's like a video playing in their mind constantly, and sometimes they would be using drugs, alcohol to numb the pain or to subside the intrusiveness. So things like that, when we do an assessment, we know that, okay, this person might be living with PTSD. And even when somebody is living with schizophrenia, Ruth had mentioned the paranoia, and they believe that someone is constantly monitoring them or someone is constantly gossiping about them. So people that lives with schizophrenia, it's important for us to do an assessment, do diagnosis, whereby we refer them to see a psychiatrist for them to put them on medications. Talking about depression, oftentimes people will use the word loosely and they'll say, oh, I'm depressed. Oh, I'm so depressed. And you know that depression is a very serious illness. So if you are not clinically diagnosed with depression, please, we would encourage the listeners and the public not to label themselves or label other people with depression, because it's a very serious illness. And we call it the silent killer. Because when people live with depression, like we heard from Anna, they will withdraw. They don't want to include themselves in social events, and you see that they are lonely, very sad, and they will have loss of appetite, and sometimes they would oversleep or they will not sleep at all. So people that lives with depression, we encourage that help is available and that people should not lose hope. Because mental health issues, we are all part of the problem and solution at the same time.
From what you've said, it's no different to the symptoms that Nana Kissi Opam the first observes in people. So at least there's no marked difference in the West, from the Western view, in terms of how mental health challenges are diagnosed. Now, I'd like to get into the meat of men's mental health. Masculinity is one that is from as young as I can remember. I was reminded not to cry, and that I was strong and I could face anything. Growing up, I sometimes wonder why I was told that, because I realized there are days where you are overwhelmed by the vicissitudes of life. You also face things. You're having a bad day at work. Your finances aren't up to scratch. You have responsibilities that must be met. There's several different things. You maybe have been jilted by a lover, something. And you'll feel this overwhelming emotion inside of you. And all it does is it knots up to your throat. You can't let it out. Why is that so?
Do you want me to start off, or you want to do?
You know, before you start, I did want to make a correction.
Okay.
In the sense that the symptoms that we described, all of us feel sad at some point in life. So I want to make sure that we're not saying that everybody that is sad or withdrawn
Is
living
depressed.
with depression.
Yeah.
Usually, in terms of diagnosis, you need to be experiencing those symptoms for at least 2 weeks, constantly and consistently, before a doctor can diagnose you
And
with,
say that you are
Yes.
depressed. Okay.
I just wanted to say that because we
Okay.
all get sad.
No,
we don't
I'm
want
very happy that you did that. You know, but I mean, what the question I really wanted
Yes.
to get to is about how does our upbringing set us up to handle or malhandle emotions?
That our upbringing in our culture, and I don't think it's really the Ghanaian culture alone. I think generally men are raised in that way. Don't cry, be a man, be strong, be brave, right? I think in the Chi language there's a saying that Bemans, no,
Bema na num
Tutua.
edra. Etutua is
Esi bema
bema bo.
koko.
That's right.
Bema na
Bema na
num
num
edra
edra.
you know.
That's the one. That's the one. I say we're men are told from a young age, you know, and we women, we're part of the problem because we raise children, like as in mothers. We raise our children, you know, the girls separate, you know, differently, the boys differently. Girls, we're cuddling them, we're kissing them when they fall down, we're kissing them, oh, kusa, calm. But when a boy falls down, hey, be strong. Anna wusu, oh yeah, Bema, don't cry. And that is right from a young age, put in their minds that men have to be strong. Men should not show their emotions. Men cannot express. And then unfortunately they grow up with this pattern. Even they go to school, it's the same narrative. From home to institutions to work, wherever they're going, they're still hearing the same script. Be strong, don't express yourself. And then they get married and it's the same situation. Men don't express themselves. Men go to work, they get tired, they come home. You know, like Elvis said, maybe they'll drink just to numb the pain or numb the stresses. They'll, sit in the back garden and take a cigarette or whatever the case may be. But they're not very good at expressing themselves because from the beginning, they've been told, say, memons.
So the upbringing, and this is not peculiar to just us.
No.
But in other societies, people seek help.
Yeah.
I have friends who happily tell me, I am going to see my therapist.
Wow, that is awesome.
They don't live in Ghana. But that's where I'm driving at. That if the upbringing and this business of being strong and the idea of masculinity is taught across the globe, why are other societies okay with men being able to be vulnerable, be able to go and seek help?
Yes, it's because they are constantly and continually creating a safe space for them, non-judgmental. And the notion of confidentiality is key and powerful. Because there are times that when people leave themselves vulnerable, they are fearful of what one might use the information for. Example, in the church setting, people are so afraid to leave themselves vulnerable, even though they seem as a safe space, people talking about it, but really, is that really a safe space? Because if you really want to hear the gossip of the evening, go to prayer meeting. That is where people take other people's business. Oh, let's pray for this person. They've been diagnosed with this and they are living. But the question is, have they given you the permission to share their story? A prayer meeting that you feel that you are being helpful, but the question is, have they given you the prayer meeting? So creating safe space, confidentiality, and also going back to destigmatize. You know, oftentimes when we're growing up, we say when we grow up, we don't want to be like our dad and mom. But guess what? When you grow up, you are just like dad and mom. Why? Because you never had the tools and skills to do things differently. So the script that we've all written right from childhood, know that your dad gave you what they have, because you can never give someone what you don't have. So their great-great-grandparents pass on those scripts. But in this moment in time, we have the opportunity to rewrite our script. Let us break that ongoing cycle and look at it in a different cycle. One author puts it beautifully, says that if you keep tears hidden in you, it forms an iceberg. But guess what? It's the same Titanic. It's the same iceberg that sank the great Titanic. So how many times are we men sinking because we have struck the iceberg inside of us?
Very deep questions. Now, let me go to the phone line. But just before then, we asked a few people a few questions. Over. Mami, 1 second. Just share this comments that some of our listeners got a chance to share their thoughts. And we were asking, whether they feel it's okay to talk about their challenges and whether they're safe spaces. Now, one says, I just wish I was told to create a space in me to embrace my vulnerability. Right. This is one comment. Another says, it's sad. I can't even visualize them saying anything to me. Communication is key, is what another person says. It says, I'm also told that I shouldn't entertain nonsense and stupidity. So their vulnerability, this is how they're told to deal with it. My father actually told me all I need to hear about this subject, don't split your head over situations you can't control or change. And this is how they deal with their challenges. Another says, I wish they educated us to understand the importance of our mental health and how to control our emotions against things that are beyond our reach. This is just a cross-section of the responses that we got. And before I go to Nana Asaase, the poet, and to Dr. Day, I will go to Nana Kissi Opam the first. Nana.
Akra.
Na upese wodi
na kakra me pese kankan ho ne se ya na memma di abraho enam se so be ware a enema bi e be koso no ama be ma no hu se e de awon be wukan.
Wow.
Memma was ayare no den se oba bi adim se ku ne be wukan enti o ansampa enti ahomboa ne nhyehyɛ a ɛkɔso ofie hɔ no obehu sɛ ɔbaa no boa ɔne ne mmaa nneɛma no na agya papa deɛ nti papa ne ne to fam a na saa awerɛ hɔ no afiaseɛ aba ne mu.
Wow.
San sɛ ɔkɔware no aware no nya mma so koraa no onya hu ɔba no ho koraa no yɛayɛ certificate ama obi a ɔkɔyɛ adwuma no onya start yɛ no na wayɛ certificate ama no na adwuma no ɔba no wanyɛ ne yɛ a certificate obere no waje edo ye point enti enya certificate no ma oba ni wie pa na be ma na committee no ho san say adwuma na odi be ma oba na ye no e bia na wa anye no nia e fata usu yire di nso a enye ye enti e ho nso ye mema yare ye kese ba ko pa.
So men do go through bouts of sadness. For example, just ahead of marriage, they come to a realization that this is going to be a very tall order, and that in itself could create a bit of sadness. Dr. Richard Daya Samoa is on the line, and I'm going to be coming to him in a moment. But Nana Asaase, thanks for joining us. How are you today?
I'm very well, Nisha. How about you?
Well, God is gracious, and we're taking one day at a time. Now, fantastic. I would like to dive into the mind of the creative. I mean, you've got to dig deep to constantly bring out things that entertain people on days that you don't feel like it, but you still do it. What is? How do you manage to keep your mental health at the levels that allow you to still be the Nana Asaase that everybody loves to see?
Good morning again, and good morning to our other panelists and all our listeners. Okay, in so, there are a lot of ways in which we preserve, our sanity and our mindset, especially for what I do and for what most people do. You're constantly tossing things about in your head. And so if you do not have your peace of mind, then there is trouble. I like to stay around people who give me a lot of positive energy, a lot of creative energy. When I set my mind to something, I want to do this. Until I say I don't want to do it, if you have alternative ways of helping me to do it, I'd like to hear it. Otherwise, please keep your opinion to yourself. That's one principle I run by. I spend a lot of time in nature. It helps. A lot of the people who are my friends, I have very meaningful conversations with, are older. They are elderly people, 60 onwards, and the kind of, they are not in a hurry. They have saved life, and they are sharing experience with you. They're sharing calm with you. I'm a man of faith. People say that faith has been abused in many quarters, but in a lot of ways, faith, when you have that place with God for yourself, it does a lot. My previous panelist was talking about, faith in safe spaces, somebody just coming to prayer meeting and they're just spilling the matter as though it's a prayer topic, but low-key, that's the gossip of the moment. But if you have that place where you learn to meditate and internalize, it helps a lot. I'm a natural nocturnal. You sleep at 9 p.m., you will find me going around 1:30 or 2. By then, I take my time, sort through the issues of the day, anything I need to do, so that I segment my life from parenting to being the poet, to being somebody's first son, to being somebody's elder brother, to, being somebody's mentor. It takes a lot. So if you don't have that, it takes a lot on you. I also make time to take time off work. There are times when I'm off grid. They're like, Nana, you can watch it. When I don't have business anywhere, I don't spend time there unless I have business in that space. These are just a few ways I manage to stay afloat. I still need a bit more rest though.
Okay. Dr. Day, I'm glad that you joined us. Dr. Day Asamoah is with the Mental Health Authority, which became or was birthed by the Act 846, the Mental Health Act in 2012. So one could say that for the last 13 years, Ghana has decided to focus a mainstream attention to mental health. What are the support structures that you'd say are in place today for men dealing with emotional and psychological trauma?
Good morning, and good morning to all panelists. From the mental health authority perspective and mental health in general in Ghana, to say that we will come a long way in terms of improving mental health in general and even for men. So to start off with, to say that the community generally has become more open to mental health and mental health in men than 10 years ago, which is a good improvement. There's still a good that we've done this. We still have issues of stigma and against mental health and people with mental health. Even for those of us who work in the mental health space, we do experience some stigma. That's an issue. But it's improved generally. Also, access to mental health care has also improved significantly. About 10, 20 years ago, there were relatively few mental health professionals, especially psychiatrists. But now we are seeing significant changes. And although still we have a relatively larger number in the capitals and the regional capitals, we are still having quite some numbers now within the district. We also have psychologists, we have mental health nurses, also available to provide support. And I have community-based mental health services as well. So generally there's been an improvement, but we see that there's still a whole lot more that is done especially with regards to men's mental health. As we know, when it comes to suicide, although women would generally attempt suicide more than men die by suicide 4 times more than women. So it's a big issue because of men's mental health. And we notice that one of the major issues that contribute to this, the stresses specific to men, particularly in terms of responsibility and expectation. And because of that, men experience more distress in terms of mental health and getting support for them. I'll say that, from a professional psychologist as well, I think that most of our therapies and techniques, because of their history, are more geared or more easier for women to use than for men. And so it's really important that we take a look at therapy techniques and approaches that are more tailored towards men's mental health. So generally there's some improvement, but there's a whole lot more to be done. One of the areas that we are really looking at, starting from last month, we started the Purple Month discussion, and we're looking at paternal mental health, also looking at paternal mental health. That's another major aspect that is ignored. The mental health distress that a man experiences, especially a baby, and even after delivery, the baby. All these are important aspects that the authority has taken note of that constitute particular attention and going forward.
Now, let's face it, we've identified that culturally the way we're raised make us tend to bottle things up. To borrow from one of the responses we got when we asked, what's the one thing you wish your father or an older male relative had told you about emotions and mental health? This is one of the responses is, I wish I was taught how to grieve properly as a man and not to bottle things up. This is how we're all raised. Now, when you grieve or you bottle things up, you withdraw sometimes. You're very quiet. It's often said that men fix problems in their heads before they act, whereas women would speak up about it. From a female's perspective, and these broken men like me will grow up and go and marry somebody's daughter, and she would have thought, yeah, Charlie, this is my Prince Charming, except that he's broken. What sort of support could women give to men in being able to, one, spot that there's fire on the mountain and maybe help them find help? And I'd like to get your thoughts on that, Ruth.
Women should listen more. We should listen.
But we don't talk.
You don't talk. Maybe because we don't listen. Maybe because we're not creating safe spaces. Maybe because women, we've also been told men should not cry. And so when the men come to us and they're vulnerable and they're tearful and they're emotional, maybe we don't know how to hold space. We feel awkward. And we are also repeating the same cycle and tell them, hey, I know usu. Well, we are Bema, why are you crying? Right? So as women, I think it's good to notice when our husbands or our men, brothers, fathers are quiet. Simply going and saying, how are you doing? And not just how are you doing, you start walking off.
Like, how are you really doing?
Right. Stop. Look at them in the face and say, how are you doing? I've noticed that for the last few days you've been a little withdrawn. I've noticed that you don't have as much interest in the activities that you used to. I've noticed this, I've noticed that. What can I do to help? Would you like to speak to somebody? But I think oftentimes we're not very attentive, we're not very patient. We don't stop. We're so busy in life in general that we don't take time to listen. Listen is very key. And you said, but we don't talk, so what are you listening to? We're listening to the non-verbal communication. Right. We're listening to the quietness. We're noticing the withdrawal. We're noticing even maybe the agitation, the anger that's coming. Maybe your spouse or your brother or the man in your family is not that person, but all of a sudden they're either talking too much or not talking enough. Or they're more angry, they're agitated, they're irritated. You have to notice the change in the men so that you can confront it. What is going on? And confrontation is not aggressive. It needs to be peaceful. It needs to be compassionate, empathetic, all of those nice things that we offer our girlfriends. We should be able to offer the same space and be patient with our men in the family as well.
Wow. Now that's very, very insightful. I mean, Ruth and Elvis, you offer counseling services, therapy. You're both psychotherapists. How often do you see the man's state of mind being the underlying cause of the breakdown of a marriage?
A lot of times. And even more so post-COVID, we've seen unprecedented men checking into therapy.
Wow.
And it's so refreshing when we see our men come through the doors.
Okay.
And, I have permission to share some bits from our clients that have given permission for educational purposes. I had a 92-year-old client, a male, who checked into therapy. Then he sat down and looked at me and he said, "My goodness, I wish I had done this in my teens and my 20s because I know I would never have divorced my wife."
Wow.
That is very deep, because now they looking at a different way of thinking. For example, we encourage people that before you get into any marriage relationship, do premarital counseling. Do premarital therapy, because that is where you learn to be vulnerable.
I'm happy you said the second part, premarital counseling.
Yes.
Premarital therapy.
Therapy, yes.
Counseling doesn't always include therapy.
Yes.
Why is therapy so important?
Therapy is important because you want to bring the clinical aspect into it, because we've used counseling so many times, and everyone can say, I'm a counselor, but the question is, what does it mean to be a counselor? But when you are a therapist, you are trained clinically. That sometimes people will share their story and you would really notice that maybe they have gone through sexual abuse and trauma, or maybe they've suffered domestic violence heavily, or maybe they have some issues that would impact the marriage. So as a therapist, this is where you engage them and you say, now let's put the premarital on hold and each one of you go for individual therapy, so that you bring the better side of you into the relationship. Because you see, nobody is perfect. Like you said, we are all broken, because the first time you meet a perfect person is a mismatch, because all of us are broken. So I bring my broken piece, you also bring your broken piece. But the healing takes place when we leave the vulnerability and we come in. So you had asked a very important question about men. It is not too late for us to start the journey. One of the listeners say, I wish I was taught how to cry. You see, crying is healing. That is how nature made it, because we are made in the image of God, and God is an emotional being. That's why we said, and the anger of God was kindled against the children of Israel, and God's wrath. God is emotional. And look at what Christ did. He wept. He cried. So if he let out his emotions, why are we bottling and hiding emotion? Because it's like you take a bottle of Sprite and you keep shaking it. Tell me, when you open it, what happens?
You lose all of it.
It explodes like a volcano. And that is what we are doing as men. That once we bottle up, we keep building up until we can't contain it anymore. And someone will just say something that is harmless, and that will be a trigger to explode like a volcano. Help is available. And we are all here to change the narrative. We are here to support the men to check into therapy, because we wish and we are hoping. Our vision is that just as you will call your friend, hey, Jack, I'm going to the dentist because my tooth have been aching all night, and you don't find any stigma attached to it. You would say, hey, I am just going to see my therapist to just have a conversation. So we create that safe space.
Now, these are very important points that you've raised. Dr. Day Asamoah is still on the line. I'm going to go to Nana Asaase at this point. Fritz, before Nana Asaase,
Right.
in a minute, I mean, as a younger man,
Right.
you're not a child, so you're just a younger, slightly, you're a millennial. Am I right?
Absolutely.
Yeah, millennial. Okay, all right. So the millennials are and Gen Zs are sort of seen as, okay, they're a little softer, they're more sensitive. They're, are you as aware of the need for mental health, managing your mental health better compared to the older generation you've encountered?
Absolutely, because of some literature and materials I have read, sort of got the consciousness on how to prioritize my mental health. I read somewhere that pain is meant to be felt, and when you express that pain, out of it comes strength. And since I read that thing, it really, changed a lot of things for me. If I feel that I have to have the front row seat to express my vulnerability and emotional expressions, it's non-negotiable for me. I go all out. And let me just allude to something you said about the role that women play in helping men, deal with their mental health. There was this time I was going to buy something, and there was a growing queue, really heaving. And I was really impatient. Usually when I see queues like that, it gives me triggers, and my mental health takes a hit. And I was then with my kid sister, and while I was there and trying to deal with everything that was happening around the queue and everything, she was looking at my body posture and the non-verbal cues, and she just said to me that, look, they are serving every other person. Be patient. It will get you your time and for you to be served. So it's very important the role that women play, in the lives of men, especially when it comes to their mental health. A lot of attention paying, a lot of reading non-verbal cues. And if they are able to read those things, then they are able to proffer the right advice for men, and it helps them dealing with their situation.
Nana Asaase, that's deep. Nana Asaase. Hi.
Yes, sure.
We have you here. Great. So you're passionate about mental health as a subject, not just as awareness of what you need to do to remain at the top of your game. What was the inspiration for you for paying so much attention to a subject matter like that?
Okay, sure. So as a creative, I've had my own share of, being down at times. Life comes at you with a lot of things. This might not be the platform. It's too short for me to probably open up on all of this, but I think I beat depression at a point in my life. So the exercise for you to realize you might have been depressed simply means you probably beat it. Then I think I beat depression at a point in my life. COVID came with a lot of its own stuff, and then a few of my encountered issues taught me a lot that, look, we hold the keys to our sanity, and all of life is really about the mind. Once you lose that calm, once you lose that peace of mind, look, that storm is up there in the mind. You lose everything. So our peace of mind is not for sale. It's very important. So my personal experiences taught me that at every point in time we should have control of the mind. I think at another time we might have this conversation in more lengthy.
I can guarantee you this is just the beginning. Right. Seeing as we don't have a lot of time for today's conversation, I just would like you to maybe share a short piece or a verse for us as you leave us.
So I made a few, I call them masculine sentences. Let me leave them with us, and you'll find the subject matter might be good enough. Don't pay attention to the rhymes. And so Proverbs 22, somewhere in there says, train up a child the way to go. When he or she grows up, he will not depart from him. But girls are taught, constantly reminded, you'll be a mother, a wife, a homemaker, and all of that, but a man. A man is supposed to be strong, never taught you will be a man, you will be a father, you will be somebody's role model. A man is just meant to be a man. It's on the ends of old rules that new ones are woven in shore. And so men are pitted against each other like bulls, taught to compete and to win, and at all costs, by any means possible. And every man, sadly, is a stranger in his own home. Truth, we live in a woman's world. When it becomes a matter of convenience, it becomes a man's world. Let us not start that argument, my friend. But in a bit, boy-child education will become a global urgency. When peace of our mind is not for sale, peace of mind is not for sale, men's tears matter. Thank you.
Wow. Thank you very much, Nana Asaase. As always, poignant and straight into the heart. We're grateful for your time on the show this morning, and we certainly will have further conversations on this one. We're going into the final leg of this conversation, and I would like to bring Dr. Daya Samoa on there in a minute. Doc, what is the place of philanthropy in bringing about more support for organizations like the Mental Health Authority or not-for-profit organizations that are looking to expand the reach of care for men's mental health?
Thank you again. So for particularly in the field of mental health, where there's still issues of stigma and turning to funding, philanthropic organizations, individuals, CSO, working in some of the mental health facilities in Ghana, we find that a lot of the funding and support actually comes from churches, NGOs, and organizations that make donations. We would like to say that we appreciate all the support that's been coming in so far, and we pray and hope that this partnership and support will continue. We also want to look beyond just the financial support and aid, also look at things like advocacy, and so for radio stations like yourself and for others, being a voice for mental health, meaning that it's been in silence for such a long time, picking up and having programs like this, opportunities for men to speak up and share their mental health struggles and how they deal with them, and if you can support them, would be very useful and helpful in terms of providing good mental support for men.
Wonderful. Well, we're grateful to you. Nana Nana Kissi Opam the first. Mpacho. Pong and Komoi. Pese udi. Ifutu obi jam mama. Mama ebia. Abrabo mun sem ha omo. Omo de ahye omo.
Yo na me dase. Emema e wo suban bi te se emofra. Se abofra bibiye na utimi sua kwesi bra obi ebisa na asem. De na yo. Na wa complaini se bia ko bi na abomi. Se complaini wie na o ka bibia kire na ne kuma atone yem. Se beba no su ana se o complaini bibi na yo se ko kan bibi ma ne kuma atone yem no amma na sa emu ayen pa na akuma saye no efrase ekosoro nti mesre mema no se yesu no bia emu ayen kra ime ni na yankasa yanka ya no ntum se bia no bia ma me bisa o se da aden na ne mama ma we ne wani nanka papa no twen se
bi bisa
no sa question no and ma na sa woni onyai
nti esa onye obi misawa esa wo pe obi ekira kwan na nso kona ukaka wa asem na bo se therapist
therapist bi ni mama aka no therapist o no akaka wa asem na bi obeka bibia e be ma okuma atoyem eno ya ha we manya e ha wonyina no
okay
se wusu na onyo bi emisawo ne ekoso
na akuma se na asaase Wonderful. Ruth, help is available, evidently. But again, you talked about what men need to do. What do you think society has to do to make it more easy? I didn't want to say attractive, but make it easier for men to be vulnerable.
Yeah.
And see it as part of life.
We've been saying this throughout the program today. Creating safe spaces, being able to have conversations. Churches should make it a point to talk about it at the pulpit. Well-being, mental well-being, emotional well-being. I think that from a very early age, it should be in the curriculum. Schools should be teaching about mental well-being the same way they teach PE or home economics. They should also teach about mental well-being, the importance of taking care of yourself. As women, we should create, again, safe spaces. I can't say the safe spaces enough, because that's what really turns people off. When I come to you and you brush me off, or you dismiss me and tell me, oh, Jai Wasem. These are off-putting. Just as women need people to listen to them, men also do. We shouldn't take it for granted, because we're all created in God's image, women and men. Of course, we're expecting men to be the protectors. But for you to be a protector, you also need to be well looked after. As we say, you can't pour from an empty cup. If you, the man, are empty, how are you supposed to take care of the family? You know, when oftentimes you go airborne in the plane, they tell us, put your own mask on before even the baby on your lap.
Yeah.
So if you, the man, are supposed to be the husband, the father, the brother, the protector, the priest in the home, how are you not taking care of yourself so you can take care of me? You know, like Elvis said, Jesus also, when he was on earth, there are many instances where he took himself away to rest, to sleep, to pray. These are mental well-being. He was taking care of himself so he can take care of everybody else. So, yes, creating more spaces so men can have conversations. Men, don't be afraid. You know, get support from each other. When you go to the bar or you're sitting out, have these conversations. Let it be as normal as talking about football, especially talking about Arsenal losing and coming second place.
Please, come on, don't get on me, Ruth. Stop that, Ruth.
You're an Arsenal fan.
I am an Arsenal fan.
Why do they pick on us like that?
I'm telling you.
It's part of the reason men's mental health.
Exactly. Oh, yes, exactly. And what you have just said is not your might or power. The Spirit revealed it to you.
You know, but I mean, it's all well and good. Stop picking on Arsenal. But Elvis, you talked about, you know, helping at El-Pizo Counseling Services. You're on the ground. You're working with people. If I needed help, can I come to you?
Absolutely.
Where will I find
you? We, at the moment, offering virtual services that people can be in the comfort of their homes. As much as we are stripping down stigma, we want to start from somewhere that let people become comfortable in their own environment, in their own homes, instead of saying, oh, okay, there is this building psychotherapy service, and people say, oh my goodness, I'm afraid to
everybody sees me going there.
Everybody sees me going there. So let's start from somewhere, because to make 1,000 steps, we begin with one step. So the one step is people coming, and when they come and they witness, they cannot be like the woman at the well. They will say, come and see. It is not scary. Come and see. I'm hurt. Come and see. I've gone through therapeutic healing. Come and see. The therapist created a safe space there, because we have various forms of, you know, modalities, models that we use to support people. It could be anywhere from cognitive behavioral therapy or solution-focused multimodal, cognitive processing therapy, you name it, to support people go through the healing process. We are online. We can be found at elpizotherapy.com. El-Pizo.
E-L-P-I-Z-O.
elpizotherapy.com. And you can also email us at connect@elpizotherapy.com. Connect@elpizotherapy.com. If you want to call in and talk to us, we will give our Ghana number and our WhatsApp number, which is the foreign number. So the Ghana number is 0241 288 440. I repeat, 0241 288 440. Or you could reach us at +1 647 997 1413 +1 647 997 1413 or +1 647 928. That is Ruth number 1413 +1 647 928 1413. And may I just add one line for us? We want to encourage all our listeners, whether male or female, that to go through healing for yourself is divine. We would encourage self-care. Self-care is not selfish. Sometimes when people are taking care of themselves, they feel that they are being selfish. And sometimes people can't even take half an hour for themselves. They can work for 15 hours. They will look after their children, look after their family members. But to take half an hour for yourself, it becomes a challenge. Let us start from somewhere to take care of ourselves. Because when we take care of ourselves and we say, love your neighbor as yourself, how can you love someone as yourself when you are going through emotionally flooded, situations? That means that whatever that you are experiencing is what you are going to give people. So let us take care of ourselves so that as we love people, we would. I love Michael Jackson. He said, I'm looking or standing the man in the mirror and I'm asking the man to change his way. So men, look at yourself in the mirror and say, let me change my ways by reaching up to El-Pizo Therapy. Thank you.
All right. Well, thank you very much. Do seek help. But self-care is critical. Your mental health starts with you. It starts with you taking a decision to say you matter. And it starts with you saying, I need help, and finding that help when you realize you need it. Thank you very much, Ruth and Elvis Baah-Gyebi, and also to Nana Asaase, the poet, to Dr. Richard Day Asamoah, and to Nana Kissi Opam I. We're grateful to you all for making this conversation as great as it has been. God bless you all.
Thank you for watching. Like, comment, share, and subscribe.